It's a Saturday evening in September 1996, and we're driving back home after a dinner out. It was date night. As I'm driving, Liz tells me this story, this encounter. She starts off telling me that she's going to tell me something that she's been holding on to for 9 months. I think, I know she's not pregnant. Okay, what is it? And then this story, this encounter with Jesus in our house. Wow. I tend to look at things in a very black or white manner, very little gray. I'm thinking, she's either telling me the truth, and I thought, wow, how cool is that? Or she's crazy and we'll be getting a divorce. She's never really lied to me before. She's never tried to convert me or tell me I'm going somewhere if I don't believe in Jesus. She's never been religious. Yikes. How would this change my life? Yes, our kids were attending a Lutheran Sunday school, but I never went with them because the last place I wanted to be was in a church and hear about Jesus. You see, as a kid, I grew up with anti-Semitism. I was born in 1952 in the Bronx to Jewish parents, and all my friends were Jewish. That's all I knew. Then in 1961, my parents decided to move me and my 2 younger siblings from this small one-bedroom apartment to this new house in a small northern New Jersey town. The only problem was that I was one of the only Jewish kids in the school. It was culture shock. I was called Christ killer, dirty Jew. Keep in mind, I'm only 9. I learned early on how to use my fists to defend myself. I'd come home day after day and year after year and beg my parents to move. I was told, it'll get better. The only thing that got better was that I developed a thicker skin and a more intense anger towards Christians. My social life revolved around the local temple, about 15 minutes away. That was my haven and social home, and I loved it. That's where my friends were. I looked forward to being there. I was bar mitzvahed, confirmed, and I was Jewish. Somehow, as I grew older, my distrust of Christians became overshadowed with my drive for beautiful girls, and I got hooked on Liz. Besides, Liz's parents were amazing. They showed me love that I'd never experienced from Christians before. So I proposed to Liz in 1979, and after some difficult and emotional negotiations on how to spiritually raise our kids, like many couples still today, I agreed that we'd raise our kids in both faiths, and we were married in October 1980. So, we coexisted spiritually for 16 years until this Saturday night in 1996, when I was faced with this question. Is Jesus real, or is Liz crazy?
I grew up in a family that went to church every Sunday. In fact, my entire extended family attended the same church, and I saw them every Sunday. But we weren't overtly religious. We weren't reading the Bible at home or talking about God at home. We said grace on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that was about the extent of our family prayers. When I met my Jewish husband and fell in love with him, it was a non-issue for me. It was a non-issue for my entire family. I did not feel drawn to Jesus as a child, maybe because of the way I was raised. So Gary and I decided after some heavy negotiations after marriage that we would raise our children observing all of the holidays. And so I became an expert on the perfect Seder plate. I built family sukkahs with him, and I recited the blessings every Friday. And my children loved it all. But around 1994, I started to get curious again about Jesus. Who was this man? What did he stand for? What was this involvement that my family did have with him? And I started to think about him more. And one day while doing laundry, I had a thought. Lord, I want to see my husband through your eyes. I want to love him the way you do. I want my children to have this too. And in the middle of doing laundry, Jesus broke into my world. He stood before me. He was powerful. I knew immediately who this was. He filled my vision. The power that emanated off of Jesus kind of looks like when you look at the sun through trees on a very bright day and you see the rays coming out from behind the leaves. He emanated nuclear power. He did not look like the dying man I always saw on the cross growing up. His robes were not radiant white. They glowed from within, almost like an earthy color. His power was unmistakable, more than nuclear. And even that doesn't describe it. He spoke to me, and he said, "It's all true. It all really happened. I have won the victory." Standing there, unable to move, I firmly believed he won the victory. Well, I now had a decision to make. This man who was as real and alive as I am, as anyone seeing this is, I had to tell my husband about it. It took me 9 months to get up the courage. And so, one night, after a lovely dinner, I told my husband. I was so scared because I thought it might be the end of my marriage. Gary was very invested in his Jewish identity. He still is. He did not want to hear about Jesus. Nevertheless, I got up the courage and I told him.
If she actually saw him and he's real, then why do all the rabbis tell us he's not for us? That anyone who believes in him is being a traitor to the Jewish faith. I talked to rabbis and I read information from anti-missionaries. I found that the same anti-Semitism that I had experienced as a kid blocks many Jews from even considering Jesus. They would say, "What about the Holocaust?" they would ask. But I kept going back to her testimony. She saw him. He's got to be real, and I'm sorry, but there's something wrong, and only one truth is right. I have a type A, business-driven personality. So I took that same tenacity and dove into the scriptures and anything I could read or listen to about Jews and Jesus. At first, I didn't trust a Christian Bible. So I found a Hebrew Masoretic text and started reading the Tanakh and all the Hebrew scripture. It was amazing to see that God himself had actually revealed himself to Abraham. I went to rabbis and asked them, could God reveal himself in a physical form? But after every conversation, I was more confused than before. But Rabbi, he's real. Since I was a kid, I always tried to seek God, especially on the high holidays. I took Yom Kippur and those high holidays very seriously, and I fasted every year, starting when I was 12. God was and is important to me. I sought out Messianic Jewish teachers like Jonathan Cahn and Dr. Michael Brown. And Liz and I started attending Jonathan Cahn's congregation in Lodi, New Jersey in 1997, and eventually we raised our hands together to accept Yeshua during one of his intense altar calls. I know Yeshua is real, and I've changed over the past 26 years, and I've grown much closer to God while learning and seeking him. Prayer is like a conversation with God. I converse with him every day. No matter how much someone might try to convince me otherwise, he's real. He's the Jewish Messiah. I've also recognized that over the past 2,000 years, Jesus' Jewish roots have been overlooked or watered down. Christianity has made him into something totally un-Jewish. He's unrecognizable to a Jew, sort of how Joseph was to his brothers in Egypt. Yet he is the Jewish Messiah, the Mashiach. All of Jesus' followers were Jewish. The apostles were Jewish. Just about every book in the New Testament was written by Jews and is about Jews. The New Testament does not condemn Jews. It's written by Jews. I became a student of Paul, a Jew, and I dug deep into the context of his writing and his love for Israel and his Jewish people. It is wonderful being part of a Messianic congregation where all nations, tribes, and tongues come together as one to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and his Messiah, Yeshua. I know it sounds crazy, but he's the Messiah. Jews have it in their DNA to struggle with God, to argue with God, to question God. That's why we're called Israel, Yisrael, one who struggles with God. But Yeshua said, "Seek me, and you shall find me. I have sought, struggled, and wrestled." And he was right. I have found him, and he's real. How would your life change if you knew Jesus was real?